Okay, hi everyone. Good morning, good afternoon from Barcelona. So my name is Lorijn Zaadnoordijk and I'm indeed a postdoc at Trinity College. And I would like to thank all the organizers for organizing this really wonderful event. So yes, as Alex said, today I'll be talking to you about conducting studies with infants online. And my slides aren't working. There we go. So there are several ways in which you could study infants online. And in this presentation, I will focus on the asynchronous looking behavior acquisition. So that actually means that we will be recording infants looking behavior via a webcam while they're looking at stimuli displayed on their home computer. So measuring looking behavior has been very useful in infant studies in the lab, and it would help developmental science a lot if we can expand this measure to online studies. My talk will be somewhat of an introduction of the topics to think about for any developmental scientist who is considering testing looking behavior online, rather than a presentation of a specific study. Many of the points that I'll raise also apply to other types of online testing though. So why would we want to do online studies at all? Well, obviously I'm preaching to the choir in this community, but just to remind you, online testing provides us with the possibility to test large and possibly more diverse samples. And by the automated codified way in which asynchronous testing works, it might even increase the reproducibility. Of course, it's a lot more convenient for our infant participants and their parents, and it's a lot more convenient for us as scientists. So great, right? Let's move our studies online. Well, not that fast. Online testing isn't that easy, and it does have its unique challenges. Furthermore, many existing online testing platforms have been made for adults and sometimes don't include the possibility of making webcam recordings. However, people have been making massive progress over the last 5 or so years when it comes to testing infants online. So in this presentation, I will highlight 5 domains that can be challenging when setting up infant-looking behavior experiments online and discuss possible solutions. So the first hurdle to overcome revolves around ethics and data protection. In terms of ethics review, there's a long list of things to consider, especially because we're talking about a vulnerable group. But I'll stick to mentioning just 2 here. The first question is, who do you want to reach? I said earlier that online testing has the benefit to make the sample more diverse, but this isn't a given. It still requires careful consideration on the researcher's side. If you require a fast broadband connection, a fancy webcam, and an iPad, this might mean you will only reach a part of the population. So you need to carefully consider what you're asking of your participants when you're setting up such an experiment. A second point to consider is that we're making webcam recordings, meaning we're always dealing with identifiable data. This puts strong requirements on the security of the technical implementations. And related to this, it is good practice to allow parents to view the video before submitting it in case anything unwanted has been captured on screen, like think, for instance, about another family member passing by without clothes. As we are dealing with acquiring video data during the experiment, as well as additional personal data such as email addresses, demographic information, etc., it's important to make sure that the data are encrypted and pseudonymized. Many countries have laws and regulations, such as the GDPR in Europe, which put restrictions on, for example, the location where the data are stored. This is not really anything new for experimental research. We had to consider this in the lab as well. But what is a more complicated issue is the type of servers that you're using for online testing. Technically, GDPR allows data storage on the commercial clouds, such as AWS and Microsoft Azure, as long as the servers are in Europe and owned by or used by European companies. But many institutions have their own restrictions regarding the commercial cloud. The problem is these institutions don't want the researchers to use the commercial cloud for often good reasons, but they cannot provide what the commercial cloud can provide in terms of security, tech support, and quality. This makes it quite a complicated issue. So finally, I want to give you one very stupid example of something that's very common in the lab, but that we had to rethink for online testing in this context: how to deal with reimbursements. Monetary material gifts suddenly require us to collect much more personal data than we had to do in the lab. But going with a virtual gift, such as downloadable coloring sheets or not reimbursing at all, might generate other concerns, as pointed out also by Jenny earlier today. This is just one example of topics one suddenly has to reconsider when moving to online testing. Also, relating to questions asked to other presenters earlier, unlike adult studies, we reimburse basically for any recording that features a baby, regardless of performance or duration of participation. The second step to online testing is the question of where you're going to get your participants from. Some of these ways are not very specific to online testing. For instance, if you have your own database, great, perfect, you're basically set. If you don't have your own database, just like before, you can use Google or Facebook for online testing. This can work, online advertising. This can work fairly well, but it might involve some trial and error. Luckily, there are now also some recruitment platforms for developmental science for testing online, such as Children Helping Science, Lookit, and Kinder Schaffen Wissen. And previously, we were able to record on mTurk as well. They no longer allow webcam recordings, though, and can't be used for our purposes anymore. And the European has indicated that at the moment, recruiting developmental studies with them is not recommended, as it does not seem to work very well. So once you have your participants, you're going to want to select a paradigm. So the first and most obvious paradigm to discuss is visual preference paradigm. This can be either implemented as central looking, where you show one stimulus at a time and calculate looking time per condition, or a classical preferential looking paradigm where you show two stimuli and calculate looking time to the left and to the right stimulus. This is the easiest paradigm to use for online looking behavior, and Kim Scott and Laura Schultz compared preferential looking lab findings to online results and found that the observed patterns are actually very similar, although the effects do seem a bit weaker when you're testing online. It's important to note that the central looking paradigm assumes that one condition is more interesting than the other, though, and due to the increase in distractors in the environment, Scott and Schultz suggest that actually a left-right preferential looking paradigm might be better than an on-off paradigm, as it is basically better to always have something interesting on the screen. A second paradigm that many infant researchers are interested in testing is any type of audiovisual paradigm. This is possible. It's a bit more difficult as the audiovisual synchrony can be an issue. And recently, two preprints have been put online that show in what way stimulus presentation timings can be an issue. So do check those out, please. And in addition to the timing, it's also harder to get good control over variability in the volume and the loudspeaker location. And then there are the actually problematic paradigms. So any paradigm with more than two stimuli will suffer from insufficient precision in gaze coding. It's really difficult to see anything other than on-off screen or left-right, both when coding manually as well as when running automatic gaze coding algorithms on your infant data. For habituation paradigms, the problem lies in the contingency aspect. So it's currently very hard to make infant contingent paradigms using asynchronous acquisition. This would require good and quick automatic gaze coding algorithms, which do not yet exist, at least not for babies. One could maybe do this synchronously via video call, but this method actually isn't problem-free either. Another issue with habituation paradigms is that it will be more difficult to regain attention of the infant with the dishabituation stimulus than it is in the lab. And for the actual data acquisition, there are a few choices to be made. To start with, do you use an existing platform or do you set one up yourself? Setting one up yourself means you have more control, but of course it requires more tech developments and you would have to make sure that it's fully secure. Another choice you have to make is whether you want to use synchronous or asynchronous data acquisition. As I said in the presentation, I'm focusing on asynchronous acquisition, but it is possible to collect data using video calls as well. Synchronous acquisition might be technologically a bit easier to implement and gives you more control about on what the parent is doing, but it comes at a cost of reduced information on stimulus presentation confounds and reduced benefit of online testing in general, such as the scalability and reproducibility. If you then decide to do asynchronous testing, you need to keep in mind that you're relying on the parent, who usually isn't trained for this, to make it work. This means that you'll need very clear and short instructions. For example, regarding lighting, as Ajmal earlier also mentioned, it is a big problem that we're encountering, that the videos are either too dark or have the light source in the wrong location, creating silhouettes. In addition to your instructions, use checks wherever possible to help your parents. Also keep in mind that the environment is much more home, so make sure that your stimuli are engaging and that there's always something interesting for the infants to look at. And last but not least, log everything that you can think of. So once you've acquired your data, you want to analyze it, and the most straightforward way for this is manual gaze coding. This is very similar to how it works in the lab. Of course, it's very labor intensive though, so researchers have been trying to move to automatic gaze coding. This would reduce the variability and the subjectivity, and there are actually several algorithms available, but so far the success on infant data has been very limited. So we're trying to make that better at the moment in our lab, but yes, it's been hard. In addition to these methods, there's also been some progress on postdoc pupillometry analyses. This, of course, requires very good data quality. And for example, Kadam and Cusack have previously tried postdoc pupillometry on online webcam recordings of adults. They found that the most important parameters for success were the bandwidth of the participants, their eye color, the distance to the screen, and whether or not their face was lit by daylight. And recent work from Bainbridge and colleagues in Samuel Mears' lab suggests that it might be possible to do pupillometry on video recordings with babies as well. They had M-Turkers do the pupil size tagging based on videos acquired in the lab, and they were able to extract interesting pupil dilation results with this method. So their success is quite interesting, and it would be interesting to see if we can actually get this to work for online infant testing. So I've given you some insights about infant testing online, but if you wanted to actually do this, where would you start? Well, there are quite some options available. So there are some platforms specific for developmental research, such as recruiting via Children Helping Science and recruiting and testing via Lookit. Of course, there's the more general platforms, such as Gorilla, of course, Avlovia, Advanced, and all of these platforms have different features and possibilities. So do check them out if you want to get acquainted. In addition to these platforms, there's now a brand new ManyBabies initiative called ManyBabies-AtHome. Unlike previous ManyBaby initiatives, we're not focused on testing one particular cognitive phenomenon, but we're rather a methods-focused project with the goal to make online testing accessible for developmental researchers. And we're always looking for more researchers who are interested in this project. So if you want to join us, let me know. It's not required to have a baby lab or to even be a developmental researcher. Anyone is very welcome. So to conclude, good data quality can be acquired with infants online, and it has considerable potential, but also presents unique challenges that require solutions. Platforms for recruitment and data acquisition can address many of these challenges, and further technological developments like automatic gaze coding may increase our convenience and reproducibility. And overall, online testing is a powerful new tool for development